So lately, there's been a lot of noise about the future of Aquaman in James Gunn's new DC universe, and one rumor that has already started to catch attention is that Alexander Ludwig could be stepping into the role. Since Jason Momoa is shifting over to play Lobo in Gunn's DCU, that leaves the throne of Atlantis wide open, and it's a pretty big deal figuring out who will become the new face of the ocean. Because Aquaman has had such an up-and-down history, being mocked for decades, then finally being taken seriously thanks to Momoa, he's not a character you can just casually cast. You need someone who feels like they can command the screen, handle action, and still bring some heart to the story. That's where Alexander Ludwig comes into the picture. Most people remember him as Kato from The Hunger Games or as Bjorn Ironside from Vikings, and those roles showed off not just his acting chops, but also his physical presence. He's got that tall, athletic build and a kind of intensity that makes him feel believable in a larger-than-life role. Plus, his recent work in Heels really displayed his emotional range, proving that he can play characters who aren't just about fighting or being tough, but also have complex feelings. So when fans started speculating about him as Aquaman, it didn't sound all that far-fetched. It's important to remember that Jason Momoa's Aquaman worked partly because it flipped the old perception of the character on its head. Before Momoa, Aquaman was often seen as this goofy hero who talked to fish and wore bright orange. People made jokes about him non-stop, both in comics and in pop culture. But once Momoa came in with his surfer dude charm, gruff voice, and pure confidence, suddenly Aquaman wasn't a punchline anymore. He was cool. Aquaman ended up being one of the biggest box office hits of the DCEU, which was shocking for a character so many used to laugh at. Now with Gunn leading the DCU, fans are wondering how he's going to reintroduce Aquaman. In a recent Rolling Stone interview, Gunn admitted that years ago, he probably would have written characters like Superman in a way that made fun of them. That's just where his head was at during his earlier career. But he's grown as a filmmaker, and now he feels ready to treat these characters with respect instead of satire. And if he once would have poked fun at Superman, you can bet Aquaman would have been an easy target too. The fact that Gunn has changed his perspective is good news, because it means he'll probably carry the same earnestness he's now applying to Superman into Aquaman's reboot as well. Although we don't know when Aquaman will officially appear in the DCU's lineup, Gunn's comments give hope that the new version will keep the things that made Momoa's portrayal work. Because, let's be real, it wasn't just Momoa's charisma. The DCEU found a way to lean into Aquaman's sillier aspects, like the giant seahorse, without making them a joke. They played them straight, which actually made it fun instead of ridiculous. That kind of balance, serious but still whimsical, was exactly what Aquaman needed, and it's something Gunn is very capable of continuing. So what about Alexander Ludwig specifically? Well, his athleticism, his action experience, and his proven ability to lead make him a strong contender. He could embody a younger, maybe slightly different take on Arthur Curry. And that brings us to an interesting question. What kind of origin story would Gunn even tell this time around? Because if the DCU wants to separate itself from the DCEU, it can't just recycle Momoa's entire journey. At the same time, it can't completely ignore what worked. A smart move would be to craft an origin story that still touches on familiar beats. Arthur as the half-human, half-Atlantean torn between two worlds, but adds new layers we haven't explored before. For instance, Gunn could dive deeper into the mythology of Atlantis itself, showing us more of the political drama and the ancient history that shaped Arthur's family. Instead of just focusing on his rivalry with Orm, maybe the story highlights Atlantis' relationship with the surface world in a fresh way, making Arthur's role as a bridge between the two even more complicated. Another possibility is pulling inspiration from Geoff Johns' Aquaman run in the New 52 comics, where Arthur is seen struggling with how the surface world views him. In those stories, he isn't fully accepted by humans or Atlanteans, and people sometimes treat him as a joke. That kind of story would resonate with audiences because it mirrors how Aquaman has been seen in real life. It would also let Alexander Ludwig bring more vulnerability to the character, showing us not just a warrior king, but someone who has to earn respect through actions, not just because of his heritage. And let's not forget how much potential there is for Gunn to explore the horror side of Aquaman's world. James Wan already gave us a taste of that in the trench sequence of Aquaman, and Gunn, with his horror background, could push that even further. Imagine a version of Aquaman where Arthur's journey isn't just about fighting for a throne, but also about surviving terrifying sea creatures and uncovering dark secrets hidden in the ocean's depths. That would give the movie its own identity while still nodding to the adventurous tone that made Momoa's films popular. Of course, no matter what new origin Gunn chooses, fans will expect big, epic visuals. Part of the appeal of Aquaman was seeing Atlantis fully realized, a glowing underwater kingdom with sprawling cities and unique designs. Gunn might decide to reimagine the look, giving it a different vibe from Wan's colorful, almost fantasy-like take. Maybe he goes for something grittier, something that feels more ancient and mythological. Or maybe he keeps the vibrant energy but adds more detail, making it clear that the DCU's Atlantis has centuries of history behind it. But here's where Gunn could balance old and new, keeping some of the things that made Momoa's Aquaman so entertaining, like his swagger and sense of humor, while layering in a more classic take from the comics. For example, Ludwig's Aquaman could still crack jokes, but maybe he's a little less of the laid-back surfer and a bit more of the noble warrior. That way, the DCU keeps the accessibility audiences loved while also giving comic book fans a version of Arthur that feels closer to the original. And although Aquaman's place in the DCU timeline is still uncertain, it's safe to assume Gunn won't leave him out. Zaslav, the Warner Bros. Discovery CEO, already listed Superman, Batman, Supergirl, and Wonder Woman as foundational heroes, but it's hard to imagine a Justice League without Aquaman. Even though the Flash and Cyborg may be more up in the air, Aquaman is one of those characters that rounds out the team, especially with his unique powers and underwater domain. So in the bigger picture, it looks like Gunn is setting things up carefully. His Superman movie is launching the franchise in 2025, and we already know Supergirl and Lanterns are coming soon after. If Aquaman isn't introduced right away, maybe Gunn will build toward him slowly, letting Atlantis and its mythology simmer in the background before giving Arthur his big spotlight. That's the kind of patience Gunn has shown before, and it would make Aquaman's eventual debut feel more epic. Until then, rumors about actors like Alexander Ludwig will keep fans guessing, and honestly, that's half the fun. Because even though Gunn hasn't announced anything yet, the excitement around who'll be the next Aquaman shows just how much people care about the character now. That's a huge shift from the days when Aquaman was a joke, and it proves just how much Jason Momoa changed the game. So, while Jason Momoa is off having fun as Lobo, probably delivering the wild, chaotic performance we all know he'll nail, it might just be Alexander Ludwig's turn to claim the trident. If that happens, and if Gunn crafts a new origin that blends fresh ideas with the heart of what worked before, Aquaman could once again become one of the DCU's biggest box office hits. Because at the end of the day, Aquaman is more than just a hero who swims fast and talks to fish. He's a symbol of connection between two worlds, a king who has to balance power with compassion, and a character who, when written right, can be just as compelling as Batman or Superman. And with Gunn steering the ship this time around, it looks like the tides might be turning in Aquaman's favor once again. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.